G'day, Geoff Lewis here from Seriously Series, and today what we're going to be looking at is the ARB Air Locker. I'm not going to look at how necessarily to install one, but some of the tips, tricks and little pitfalls that you need to be aware of when putting one of these or an air locker variation in your 4x4 vehicle. And I'm going to show you how you can get it back up and running again with no time lost and get it back out there on the open trail. So if you want to find out this and more, as always, you know exactly what to do. Click on that subscribe button down below, click on that notification button too, but most importantly, stay tuned. Now the air locker, and this one here is an ARB air locker, is a very, very simple, rugged piece of kit. And basically with installing one, you're almost removing your diff center or the spider gears itself. And in there, obviously, we're then putting compressed air, which allows it to obviously lock both of your axles. In order to do that, we've got this copper line. And the copper line goes from the actual diff locking unit itself, and then spin the differential round, it goes into an air fitting within the actual diff housing itself. Now this is all relatively simple and relatively maintenance free, but there's a couple things you really need to look out for. When it comes to actually installing the differential or putting it back into your vehicle, this is where you really need to take your time. Do not rush it, because you can get in a world of hurt very, very quickly. Why? Well, it's very simple. The Achilles heel of these diff locks is the copper line. The copper line is the one thing that allows the diff lock to work. So if that breaks or fails, then what's going to happen? The diff lock isn't going to work. What can actually happen is if you push the differential into the diff housing and you knock this copper line, it can actually inadvertently run on the crown wheel. Now being copper, it's not very hard, so the crown wheel will actually wear through the copper line itself, causing a hole to form and causing an air leak. Now when this happens, as you guessed it, the air locker is not going to work. It may do, but it won't be very effective. But it will actually pressurize the axle housing itself, and what will actually happen is your diff breather will actually start squirting out air. Being a Land Rover 2, you'll probably find you'll get a few added oil leaks that weren't there before also. So when it comes to installing these, you really, as I said, need to take your time, double check, triple check, quadruple check, do whatever you need to do, but just take your time. The good thing is, if you do have this problem in whatever vehicle the diff lock's in, this is basically a service kit. So you can actually buy this from ARB and basically fit a new line and off you go. And look, you could probably braze a new bit too if you're that way inclined. Now, the next little thing that's worth noting, and I want to make it clear this video isn't a criticism to ARB, it's just a bit of a critique. The next thing that you need to look out for is the fitting here. Now we've got a few different fittings here and a few different threads and all that going on. We've obviously got the thread or the fitting going into the diff housing itself. We've then also got a small little fitting that actually fits within it. And this part here is very important because this is actually where our airline goes onto, and then we've got like a locking nut to actually push the nylon or PVC line actually on to make a seal. Now in here there's actually a little O-ring, And what can actually happen, and this has just happened to me, I've just found this, and so I was like, let's make a video about it, is that there is actually a little O-ring in there. Now, if that O-ring isn't actually seated properly, as you guessed, air is going to escape. And it will actually escape past the actual copper line itself and can actually then pressurize your axle assembly, and that's what I had happen. The other thing that you really need to be careful of is not to go over the top with tightening up these fittings. They're just meant to be firm, they're just meant to seal. They're not meant to, hold the whole car together, so to speak. The reason being is the copper is very, very soft, and if this actually spins, you can actually snap that copper line, and when you snap that, well, you've got to buy a whole new kit, and there's a lot more work involved. So just take it easy is the best advice that I've had, and it certainly works for me. Now, with fitting the actual PVC or nylon airline onto it, there's a couple things you need to sort of look at there. If the differential has been in and out of the vehicle a few times, inspect the actual end of the nylon or PVC line that's actually going onto this little nipple here. What can actually happen where the nut is actually, I guess, grabbing onto the airline itself, it can actually wear little rings around it, and this obviously creates a little void and allows air to escape, so you're not going to get a good seal. So the best thing to do is to cut it off, and when you're installing it for the first time, always make sure that you've got a bit of extra airline in the actual overall system itself. That way you don't have to start from scratch every time you have to replace, or take the diff out of the car. The only other thing that you really need to be careful of is obviously making sure there's no air leaks. Using a squirt gun with a bit of soapy water in it is definitely the way to go. The other thing that's well worth noting is if you've been doing a lot of hard sort of long distances over corrugations and vibrations, the actual solenoids themselves are very, very good for actually allowing the air to go to the lockers and all the rest, but just be sure about the connections that actually go onto it. One of the things I would recommend doing is actually soldering these. The reason being is you don't have to worry about the connectors failing, because as we know, when you need to use your diff locks or you need to use a critical piece of equipment in a very somewhat stressful situation or a difficult situation, you want it to work. You don't want to have to worry about whether it'll work or whether it won't. But anyway, that's enough from me. Hopefully you found this video of interest, and hopefully this has solved some of the problems that you might be having with your air locker too. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Please click on the notification button too. But more importantly, if you are enjoying the content here, please support Seriously Serious on Patreon. It goes to the production of these videos and a heck of a lot more, and makes a massive difference. Anyway, once again, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in our next video. I'll catch you then.